Prison Fellowship International, it's a very large organisation operating in 135 countries and chartered in about 124. It is the largest justice and prison ministry organisation in the world. I had the privilege of attending the World Prison Fellowship Conference last year in Toronto, and the opening ceremony was 135 young children as big as could hold their national flag, starting at that height, around about a 6 or 7 year old. And as they came into this auditorium in the Hilton at, or was it the Sheraton at Toronto? That's where it was. Mike, you were with me, weren't you, mate? And I'm not big on opening ceremonies. Well, here we are sitting, these kids filed in, and they put their flags one side and the other, and 135 kids formed this choir and started to lead worship to this 1,000 strong delegation. And they told us that these children were children of prisoners or ex-prisoners who had come to faith and had come and got their lives organised, and these children came as an act of thanks for the ministry of Prison Fellowship, for the ministry that had been done for their parents. It was a really moving experience, wasn't it, Mike? Absolutely dynamic. So just here in Queensland, we're running ministries like the Angel Tree. You'll hear a little bit more about that later. We have letter writers, chaplains visiting prisons all across the state. There's about 14 prisons and some farms from Numbamba in the hinterland out from Nerang right up to Mareeba, west of Cairns, and there's even a watch house at Horn Island. If you fly in and out to get to Thursday Island, you'll go through the airport. There's a watch house up there. We've got volunteers who are doing court and watch house chaplaincy in Cairns, in Southport, and courthouse support in places like Charters Towers. So there's about 185 to 200 volunteers in Prison Fellowship, and they're all doing a great job. Particularly, I want to acknowledge the chaplains here tonight. If you're a chaplain or one of the volunteers with Prison Fellowship or with Salvation Army, is Daniel Carell here? Daniel's not here? Okay. If you're a volunteer with Prison Fellowship, or you have been, or one of our chaplains, could you stand for us just for this moment? We really appreciate it, and we'd just like to say thank you. Here's some of our chaplains. God bless you. And that includes our volunteer council and our board members. One of those chaplains is Graham Hembrow, and I'd like you to welcome Graham Hembrow to the microphone. He's going to share a bit of a story with us.
I'm going all high-tech tonight. I've been asked to speak about chaplaincy, and I've been given 5 minutes, so it's a bit of an impossible task, but I hope I can do it justice. For me, there's no better way to explain what prison chaplaincy is or who prison chaplains are than the description of Jesus Christ in the books of Matthew and Luke, where he is regarded as a friend of sinners. Former prison inmate and prison chaplain in the US, Denny Croce, said in a moving message for Chuck Colson, our founding member, at his funeral earlier this year, that he was the best. He was a friend of sinners, and he even ate with them. Charles Colson used to go into prisons every Easter and every Christmas, minister to the inmates, engage with them, and sit and eat with them. Charles Colson had a grip of what Jesus held with respect to table ministry. Table ministry was something that was central to Jesus' mission. He used to recline with inmates, we read. He would eat with them, drink with them, even party with them. This was against all the rules. It broke all the Jewish customs and so forth of the day. But what Jesus knew and what Chuck Colson realised is it broke down the walls and the barriers between his audience and himself. This has become central in my ministry, both in the prisons and out in the community. I welcome inmates, drug addicts, and society's throwaways to my family's table, into my home, and that of my mum and dad as well. Another thing that Chuck Colson realised, and he reflected on the words of Paul, and in Romans 10:13 he said, "All who call on the name of the Lord shall be saved." But Paul goes on to speak rhetorically in verse 14, and he says, "How can they call on him if they do not believe? And how can they believe if they have not heard? And if they have not heard, who is it that's going to tell them? And if there's no one to tell them, it's because no one's being sent." Chuck Colson realised this and started sending people. Paul goes on then and says in verse 15, he speaks from Isaiah, and he says, "How beautiful are the feet of the messengers who bring the good news." Charles Colson was released from prison several decades ago, but made a promise to his fellow inmates that he would not forget them, that he would return, or as Arnold Schwarzenegger says, "I'll be back." Charles Colson was determined to ensure that every inmate had an opportunity to respond to the gospel and to call on the name of Jesus. He set about establishing Prison Fellowship, which, as we've just heard, is the largest standalone prison ministry in the world. Prison Fellowship Queensland is part of that legacy. And her messengers, our chaplains, their feet are beautiful, but not just their feet, their hearts as well. And I would hope throughout this evening you'll have an opportunity to get around some of these fine people and hear their heart, hear their stories. Prison Fellowship Queensland has a unique opportunity in that it is the only state in which we are able to put chaplains directly into correctional centres. Our chaplains give up time selflessly and tirelessly to enter into our prisons and engage with those who are the least in our society, the prisoners. Our chaplains perform roles such as chaplaincy, church services, baptisms, courses. We do memorial services and even weddings. Our chaplains give up their time to sit, to listen, to engage, to love, care, cry with, support, nurture, guide, and even disciple inmates. We support them not only inside, but as a number of people here can testify, we support them outside as well. Hebrews 13:3 says, "Remember those in prison as if you yourself were in prison with them." Tonight, as I conclude, I just want to encourage each and every one of you to consider chaplaincy. Consider those in prison. Remember them as if you yourself were in prison with them. Our chaplains have chosen to lay down their lives, take up their cross, and surrender themselves as captives, prisoners of Christ, as Paul would say. I encourage you here, if it's not chaplaincy, some other way of supporting this wonderful ministry, because our system at the moment is retributive. We're looking for a restorative approach, something that Jesus came to do for all men. We want to see inmates share in that, where they can be restored and transformed. I thank you for your time. God bless.